The Telltale Heart is a first-person narrative told by an unnamed narrator. Despite insisting that they are sane, the narrator suffers from a disease, nervousness, which causes over-acuteness of the senses. The old man, with whom the narrator lives, has a clouded, pale, blue, vulture-like eye, which distresses and manipulates the narrator so much that the narrator plots to murder the old man, despite also insisting that the narrator loves the old man and has never felt wronged by him. The narrator is insistent that this careful precision in committing the murder proves that they cannot possibly be insane. For 7 nights, the narrator opens the door of the old man's room to shine a sliver of light onto the evil eye. However, the old man's vulture eye is always closed, making it impossible to do the work, thus making the narrator go further into distress. On the 8th night, the old man awakens after the narrator's hand slips and makes a noise, interrupting the narrator's nightly ritual. The narrator does not draw back and after some time, decides to open the lantern. A single thin ray of light shines out and lands precisely on the evil eye, revealing that it is wide open. The narrator hears the old man's heart beating, which only gets louder and louder. This increases the narrator's anxiety to the point where the narrator decides to strike. He jumps into the room and the old man shrieks once before he is killed. The narrator then dismembers the body and conceals the pieces under the floorboards, ensuring the concealment of all signs of the crime. Even so, the old man's scream during the night causes a neighbor to report to the police, who the narrator invites in to look around. The narrator claims that the scream heard was the narrator's own in a nightmare and that the old man is absent in the country. Confident that they will not find any evidence of the murder, the narrator brings chairs for them and they sit in the old man's room. The chairs are placed on the very spot where the body is concealed. The police suspect nothing, and the narrator has a pleasant and easy manner. The narrator begins to feel uncomfortable and notices a ringing in the narrator's ears. As the ringing grows louder, the narrator concludes that it is the heartbeat of the old man coming from under the floorboards. The sound increases steadily to the narrator, though the officers do not seem to hear it. Terrified by the violent beating of the heart and convinced that the officers are aware of not only the heartbeat but also the narrator's guilt, the narrator breaks down and confesses. The narrator tells them to tear up the floorboards to reveal the remains of the old man's body. Billy, the head of an Atlanta household, prepares to take his family on a vacation to Florida. His mother, known only as the grandmother, throughout the story, warns Bailey that a convict called the Misfit has escaped from prison and is heading towards Florida. She suggests a trip to East Tennessee instead, but Bailey declines. Her grandson John Wesley comments that his grandmother could stay in Atlanta. Her granddaughter June Star rudely says she wouldn't stay at home to be queen for a day, and her infant grandchild is tended to by her daughter-in-law. When they leave the next morning, the grandmother occupies the back seat of the family's car, dressed finely so that if she is killed in an accident, she can be recognized as a Southern lady. She hides the family's cat, Pitty Singh, in a basket between her legs, not wanting to leave it home alone. While traveling, the grandmother points out scenery in Georgia. Her grandchildren respond by berating both Georgia and Tennessee, and the grandmother reminds them that in her day, children were more respectful of their native states and their parents and everything else. She delights in seeing a naked black child waving from a shack, finding the image quaint. The grandmother later sees a graveyard which was once part of a plantation that she jokingly says has gone with the wind. She tells her grandchildren that when she was a maiden lady, she had been courted by a man who, as an early owner of Coca-Cola stock, died wealthy. The family stops for barbecue at the Tower restaurant after passing a series of billboards proclaiming the restaurant and food as famous, and the proprietor, Red Sammy Butts, as the fat boy with the happy laugh. On arrival, the family finds that the place is somewhat run down. Red Sammy charms the grandmother but is rather scornful of his own wife, a mistrustful waitress who worries about being robbed by the misfit. The grandmother promptly declares Red Sammy a good man, and the two reminisce about better times while lamenting the decay of values. Later that afternoon, the family continues their trip before the grandmother falsely remembers a plantation being in the area, only realizing her mistake after convincing Bailey turn down a rocky dirt road surrounded by wilderness. The pang of this error causes her to disturb the cat, who leaps onto Bailey, who loses control of the car, and the automobile flips into a ditch. No one is seriously hurt, but the accident is witnessed by a party of 3 strange men, one of whom the grandmother recognizes as the misfit. She announces this, and the misfit has his men lead Bailey, the children's mother, and the children off into the woods where they are shot and killed. The grandmother confusedly pleads for her life, beseeching the misfit to find solace by praying, but the misfit blames Jesus Christ for his troubles and the dismal state of the world. Finally, upon seeing the misfit's despair, the grandmother reaches out, takes him by the shoulder, and gently tells him that he is one of her babies. At that moment the misfit shoots her to death. When his companions return, the misfit says that the grandmother would have been a good woman if it was someone there to shoot her every minute of her life, and seems to conclude that violence affords no real pleasure in life. A mongoose named Rikki Tikki Tavi, from his chattering vocalizations, becomes the pet of an English family residing in India. He becomes friendly with some of the other creatures inhabiting their garden and is warned of the cobras Nag and Nagaina, who are angered by the human family's presence in their territory and fear Rikki as a threat. Accordingly, Nag enters the house's bathroom before dawn to kill the humans and make Rikki leave. Rikki attacks Nag from behind in the darkness. The ensuing struggle awakens the family, and the father kills Nag with a shotgun blast while Rikki bites down on the hood of the struggling male cobra. 2. The grieving female snake Nagaina attempts revenge against the humans, cornering them as they have breakfast on a veranda. She is distracted by a female tailor bird. The husband is singing Nag's death, while Rikki destroys the cobra's unhatched brood of eggs, except for one. He carries it to where Nagaina is threatening to bite little Teddy, while his parents watch helplessly. Nagaina recovers her egg but is pursued by Rikki away from the house to the cobra's underground nest, where an unseen final battle takes place. Rikki emerges triumphant from the hole, declaring Nagaina dead. With the immediate threat defeated, Rikki dedicates his life to guarding the garden, resulting in no snake even daring to enter it.